Good, good evening, everyone. I want to welcome all of you. We're very pleased to have a full house. In fact, I think we're reaching the point of standing room only for the first town hall meeting of Ed Fitzgerald, which we're very pleased to have here in Shaker Heights. It's an honor. Well, first, let me introduce some of the public officials who are here. There are three council members from Shaker Heights, Rob Zimmerman, Lynn Ruffner, Al Foster. We have council member Deborah Hill from Warrensville Heights. We have the president of the Cuyahoga County Council, Judge Ellen Connolly. We have Cuyahoga County Council member Yvonne Conwell is here. And Sheriff Bob Reed is here. Are there any public officials that I've missed? You want to stand and introduce yourself? Okay. Yes, Judge K.J. Montgomery from the Shaker Heights Municipal Court. We don't want to miss Judge Montgomery. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to introduce the new county executive, Ed Fitzgerald. Ed has been a lawyer and a prosecutor and worked with the FBI before becoming mayor of Lakewood. Ed and I first met when we were both brand new mayors, and we sat down as mayors do and compared notes on some common financial challenges that we both faced. And I was very impressed with Ed's professional calm and thoughtful, yet bold approach to making changes that successfully overcame Lakewood's challenges and carried that community through to stability. And as a result, I was pleased to endorse Ed for county executive. Since he has assumed his present office, he's been doing exactly what the voters of Cuyahoga County had hoped when they passed Issue 6. He's reorganizing county government to streamline it and make it more efficient and effective. He's appointed high-quality people to county offices. He's instituted new procedures to assure ethical practices. And he's shown the same boldness that he displayed as mayor in implementing new initiatives to benefit our region. He's done all of this in a very thoughtful and professional manner. Ed also has a wonderful sense of humor that keeps everybody on their toes, because you never know where his jokes will land. They often land on whoever is introducing him, so I'm hopeful I can avoid that tonight. But Ed, we're very honored to have you doing your first town hall meeting here in Shaker, and very pleased to welcome you to Shaker Heights. Ed Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mayor Lyken, and I did have some, you've kind of stolen my jokes about you now. I'm going to sound predictable if I say anything about you, but I was here once before, at least once before, during the campaign. There was a candidate forum that was here, and I think I saw some of you here in the same room. It seems like a long, long time ago, but that wasn't that long ago. That was last fall, and there were 6 or 7 of us up here at a table that were running for county executive at the time. So I'm glad to be here all by myself up here, and not with my old friends. I had a conversation earlier today with a reporter about who had called about doing these town hall meetings, and she asked a very basic question, but I guess it's an important question, and that is, why are you doing town hall meetings? What's the, and it might seem obvious, but the answer is probably important. I started doing town hall meetings when after I had been the mayor of my city of Lakewood for about 6 months, and I started doing them because what I noticed was when you're in elective office and you're surrounded by people that that you hire and that report to you, you can get in a bubble, and you've got to make sure that you get out of City Hall or get out of the county building and talk to people as often as you can. And I try to do that on a one-on-one basis, but it's also important to have a regular schedule of getting out and exposing your ideas to people and hearing what they have to say. And we've done that I've been in office now for almost 5 months, and we've done that in other forums, but we wanted to have a formalized way of doing that in each and every council district. So we're going to do one of these a month, and we're going to do them in each of the council districts. So we're going to do at least 11 a year. We might take the month of December off, possibly, but we're going to try to do one a year in each council district. And I want to recognize again our council members that are here because and Council President Connolly, not just because she's the council president, but also because she represents. This is part of her district. I also want to recognize them because they vote on my budget, so I want to make sure that I always recognize them. The format I usually follow, and I'll try to be brief. I have a tendency to go on sometimes, but I'll try to be brief. I'm going to do a very quick PowerPoint presentation, just talk about some basic facts about the county and about county government and what we're working on, what our priorities are, and then I want to get to any of your questions. I will try to limit this to about an hour, and there may be more questions. I have some folks here that are on staff with me because I don't know all of the answers. Many years ago when I was a kid, I was on Academic Challenge, and I thought I knew all the answers then, but I do not. And so there will be time. I have people that work for me that know a lot more than me, and I may refer something to them, and so don't feel like I'm avoiding your question, but I may say I have some staff people here that are working with me. And I want to recognize a few of them that are here that I may, if you have a certain specific question, that I may refer you to after the meeting is over. So in addition to Sheriff Reed, who heads up a lot of our law enforcement activities, Jeff Mowry is here, who's our actually the county's first chief information officer. I'll talk about that in a minute. Sharon Cole and Bob Ivory and Nicole Daly-Jones all work for kind of the central staff on various administrative and communications issues. Joe Gauntner, who's my Deputy Chief of Staff for Human Services and has a lot of oversight over the very important human services functions of county government. So there may be some other folks here that work for me. Actually, Ed Jurist is here, who's my Regional Collaboration Director. So I may end up referring you to some folks as time goes on. But let me give a quick PowerPoint presentation, then I'll try to get to your questions as quick as I can. Okay, I used the first slide to kind of summarize what I think is going on in the county, and that is that there's a combination. When you think about Cuyahoga County, there's a combination of negative trends and very positive trends. Let's just start rolling through. Let's talk about the bad stuff first, then we'll talk about the good stuff that's happening. Population loss at Cuyahoga County, we've lost about 113,000 people in the last 10 years. The unemployment rate, these numbers are actually a little bit dated because these numbers are starting to fall. That's good news. But the unemployment rate is about 9%, 9.2%, which is about 58,000 people. High school graduation rate, the state of education overall in the county needs a lot of improvement. Only 27% of our adult population have college degrees, and that's not the only measure of economic success because there are plenty of people who are economically successful without a college degree, but every study shows that for every year of education you have, your ultimate earning potential goes up, so that's certainly a problem. Foreclosures, we know that Cuyahoga County has been at the center of the national storm when it comes to foreclosures, and we have there's already been about 1,300 so far this year, but we already had 10,000 to start out with. The corruption scandal, which hopefully is finally winding down, is the worst that the county has ever faced. There's been dozens of people indicted, and it not only has been a financial cost to the county, but it's also just sapped the confidence that people should have in their government. And we had some local elected folks and some appointed officials who just completely sold out, as far as I'm concerned, and really disgraced county government. And so that's a burden for us to overcome that. We have a lot to prove. And the state budget cuts, which when I gave this the state of the county address a few weeks ago, that's really only gotten worse. And I may talk about that more later. But we estimate that it's going to cost the county eventually by next year over $30 million, probably closer to $40 million, and that's just on the funds that we get back from Columbus. That doesn't count the revenue that they're affecting for both counties and also places like Shaker Heights by cutting taxes and cutting revenue, mostly revenue that helps not the state but localities. So they're really, I was on a radio show the other day and a caller, I think it was Sound of Ideas, and a caller said, well, why do you think that the state should bail out cities and counties that are having budget problems? That's not what's happening. Our budgets are balanced. These are funds that are local funds that the state is taking more of. Really what's happening is local governments, Shaker Heights, communities all across this council district and all of Cuyahoga County, we're contributing, we're net contributors to the state budget. And basically they're taking more local money and they're keeping it in Columbus. So the traditional amount of money that used to come back, which was our own money, is now being kept in Columbus. So we're actually bailing Governor Kasich out, in my opinion, of their budget problems, not in reverse. Don't get me started on that. But anyway, let's go. So let's talk about the positive trends. If you, and I always say, some of you have heard me say this before, but if you took all of the assets that we have in Cuyahoga County, and you just took the name Cuyahoga County off it, you took the name Greater Cleveland off of it, and then you took all of the assets of the other Midwestern, or I don't care where the city is, across the United States, you listed their assets, especially the ones that we are supposedly not competing well with, so places like Chicago and Indianapolis and Pittsburgh, but you took off the brand name, so to speak. You just said, here are the assets. We would compare very, very, very favorably. And I've lived in a couple of those cities. I was actually, my family's been in the Cleveland area for over 100 years, but my dad was in the military, and I spent most of my childhood in Indianapolis. And I know Indianapolis very, very well. My mother still lives there. Indianapolis doesn't have a fraction of the resources and assets that we have. It doesn't have, can't hold a candle to this area. I lived in Chicago for a while when I worked for the Justice Department. Chicago, my family was relieved to get back here. Yeah, they have some great things about Chicago, but the quality of life here is much better. So just a few things quickly, because I think it's important to keep these in mind, because we get a lot of bad news, but there's a lot of great things about this area. Medical institutions we have here, not just one, not just two really, but three, fantastic, between Metro, Cleveland Clinic, and UH. There's other major metropolitan areas that wouldn't even have one that would compare with those. We have great private businesses here. We have incredible higher education institutions, Lake Erie, and our natural resources and our location. We have an incredible assembly of nonprofits and cultural institutions, and we just have a lot of diversity of talent and people in this community. So we have a lot of great assets. We just have to put it together. Now, what we're trying to do with county government is we're trying to take one of those negatives, which was the county government and the way it was perceived, and bring it over to the other side of the balance sheet, so to speak, so that it can start to be instead of being a drag or something you're embarrassed about, it can be a catalyst to try to do great things. Let me just give you some quick facts, because we live and breathe, those of us that work at the county, we live and breathe county government every day, and but not everybody does, and I just want to give you a quick overview. Some of these will be things you know, some of them might be a surprise to you. Total revenue for the county is about $1.2 billion. Good news, by the way, in terms of our revenue, you might have read this in the paper the other day, we've had our 8th consecutive month of some revenues going up on sales tax. That means our local economy is starting to pick up, and also our economy is starting to grow faster. It used to be that the Cleveland area was always known to be the first to go into recession and the last to come out. We're actually leading some other parts of the country in terms of coming out of the recession, so that's good news. Let's go to the next one. Total expenses is $1.2374 billion. we run a slight surplus, but we actually have a fairly large reserve. So one of the things the previous form of government did well was they did keep a fair amount in reserve. So we have about 20% or so of our budget that's in, actually over that, that's in reserve. Shaker Heights actually has done the same thing. Shaker Heights has always had, I think it might be part of your charter, Mayor, but they've always had basically a fiscal practice where they try to keep a fairly healthy reserve. Cuyahoga County has done that too. So we're not in bad shape financially in terms of where we are right now, but our long-term trends are negative, and we're going to have to become much more efficient. This is a long list of a lot of things that we do. A huge part of our budget is human services, everything from foster care to adoption to Healthy Start. Child support enforcement we handle, senior and adult services and protective services, road and bridge repair, the sanitary engineer, our own building maintenance, animal shelter, dog licenses, property tax collections, weights and measures, the sheriff we mentioned, energy assistance programs, the medical examiner with the coroner's office, the title work that we do. We do some economic development. We're going to try to do more with that, but we've done a lot with brownfield development and a lot more. But we have a wide array of services that we do. In a nutshell, when you talk about the old government and the new government, what's changed or what's different, it's basically been a centralization of administrative power. It doesn't really give the county government more power. It's centralizing the functions. So it's not as if the legislature said, now the county can do things that cities could do before, or now the county can take power away from cities. The relationship is legally the same between a county and other branches of government, whether it be the state or a municipality. So that has not changed, and there was some confusion about that actually during the election. There were people, believe it or not, that thought that the county executive was basically going to be the mayor of the county and all services were going to be done now by the county. We still get phone calls like that sometimes, but no, there are still municipal governments, and they're not going away. But we have centralized our lines of authority. So basically you have a county executive, you have 11 county council members, and you have an independently elected prosecutor. And I'm not counting the judicial side of things. We have, I think, 32 common pleas judges, and that's the judicial branch, of course, remains separate. So what are our priorities as we look at things? Well, first of all, and I kind of referenced this before, but it's my philosophy that you can't undertake really anything in life. You can't undertake anything that's ambitious or new or bold if people don't trust you in the first place. And I think that has application just across, human experience, but it's certainly true in government. So the first thing that we have tried to focus on is just restoring trust. Now, how have we tried to do that? Well, after I'd been in office for about an hour, we signed a new ethics policy. And then we started working with council about adopting an actual ethics ordinance. And we went back and forth with them, refining that, looking at best practices across the country about what would be the strictest but most practical ethical guidelines and rules that we could have for our own employees. And we passed that a few weeks ago, as you may have read, and we're enforcing it. Now, there are two ways that we're enforcing. 'Cause you can have the strictest rules in the world, but if somebody's not there enforcing it, it's not going to be worth the paper it's written on. We're doing it two ways. One is that we've sent a very clear message administratively that we take these things seriously. That's everything from ethical guidelines about who you can do business with and nepotism rules and who you can accept a gift from or anything like that, but it's also just basic employee conduct rules. Come to work on time, work hard, do your job, show up every day. You have to be professional. You can't treat customers poorly. And if you don't do those things, there are consequences to be paid. You'll be reprimanded, you'll be suspended, you'll be terminated. And we've done, not that it's all negative, but you have to let workers know that you're serious about that, and we have started to see the culture change a little bit. But I don't want to go too much farther down that road without telling you that the vast majority of county employees are great people that were already doing all those things, but there were a few people that were giving the rest of the organization a bad reputation, and in the long run, it's going to be good for everybody because people will be prouder to work for Cuyahoga County. So we're working on that. Secondly, just a few more things quickly. The county was hit or miss in terms of even evaluating employees. So we had departments where there were employees that had maybe worked there 30 years and only had 2 pieces of paper in their personnel files, the day they were hired and the day they retired. You can't manage like that. It's not fair to a manager, it's not fair to anybody, it's not fair to the employee. Because if they're doing a great job, you want to reward them. If they're doing a lousy job, you got to correct it. So every single employee, 100% of employees are being evaluated this year. But there were managers that didn't believe that they even had the authority to do that. So we have a lot of training to do of both managers and employees, but we're getting there. Mandatory ethics training, we're doing that. We've trained about 1,000. We have 5,500 employees that we directly supervise in the executive branch. 1,000 of them have already gone through mandatory ethics training. And that training isn't just provided by myself or my staff, but we brought in the Ohio Ethics Commission just to make sure that we were following all of the rules, that we were communicating as clearly as we possibly could what our expectations are. Independent enforcement. One of my first hires when I got there was I hired an independent inspector general who is a federal prosecutor named Naila Bird, and she has been, she's basically going to be our independent watchdog on all of these ethical rules. And we're still working with council about how that is going to be implemented, but she has already hit the ground running and has already had an impact. And by the way, that goes not just for enforcing the rules, it also means that an employee that has knowledge about misconduct has some place where they can go in order to report it. Because it's important to make sure that if somebody is a true whistleblower about bad behavior, that they have some place that they can go. Transparency. We're trying to do all of our business, as much of it as we practically can, in public. Now, and that includes everything from town hall meetings where we explain what we're doing, to making sure that all the county's contracts are online. Our philosophy is we basically want to put the county's checkbook online, because it's your money, it's really your checkbook, and we want people to know, here's how you get a contract, here's what the bidding process is, here's how we're spending your money. And we also make sure that when we're having approval processes for contracts, that those meetings are open to the public. So we're trying to be as open as we possibly can. We're doing that through our website too. If you go to our website, you'll see immediately that there's an open government section of the website so you can see what we're doing. Okay. Efficiency. This is an end in unto itself, because efficiency is a worthy goal all by itself. But we also have certain things that we want to invest in, and I'll get to those in a minute. We also have to absorb all of these cuts that we're getting from the federal government and especially from the state government. So how are we doing that? Well, we're using something called County Stat. That is a nationwide program or protocol which tries to measure what government does and set up performance standards for each and every function of government. And we have been implementing that department by department. And we're using that to make what we think are informed decisions about how we spend our money. And the biggest expenditure that we have is personnel. So every single month that we have been in office since January, every single month the payroll has gone down. Some of that's been through attrition, some of it has been through retirement, some of it has been resignation. Sometimes we suggested the resignation, sometimes it was termination, and sometimes it was layoff. But we have to get smaller. Now, there is a stereotype out there that I don't think was true, was that the county had thousands and thousands of unnecessary employees. That, I believe, was an exaggeration. But we can get smaller, and we are getting smaller. Now, when I was mayor of my city, we ended up getting 20% smaller. I'm frequently asked, how much smaller is the county going to get? I get asked that by employees all the time, because obviously it causes them anxiety, and I understand that, and I want to get this over with as quickly as I can. But I will not rush it, because we're going through every department and trying to rationally measure what do our staffing levels need to be. And that's why you're seeing these things happen slowly. What we're not doing is what I call budgeting for dummies. Budgeting for dummies is when you say, well, I need to save 5%, so I'm going to tell all my managers, cut 5%, and just get it done. I don't want to hear how that's not how we're doing it. So there will be some departments that may be eliminated entirely. There may be other departments that actually get bigger because there's more work to be done in their particular area. So we're taking a very rational, methodical approach. There have been about $8 million has been saved in payroll. That's net, by the way. There's been about $8 million in payroll saved so far, and there's about 120 fewer positions. But we are not done with that process. We're also looking at other things to promote efficiency in county operations. I won't bore you with all the details, but for instance, the county owns and operates over, either rents or leases, over 50 buildings across Cuyahoga County. And they are grossly inefficient. Everything from how much we spend on utilities to, we'll have 2 county buildings that are pretty close to each other, and one of them we own and it's not filled up, and another one we're renting. I mean, it's a real hodgepodge. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So we're going through a consolidation process that we hope to complete later this year, and that will eventually, I think, save millions of dollars as well. We're also trying to encourage efficiency outside of our own operations. So we're trying to, and that's part of the focus, our focus on regionalism. We did appoint Ed Jerse as our Director of Regional Collaboration, as I mentioned. So as all of these cities are struggling with their own budgets, we're looking at ways where we can help, or we can encourage shared services or a regional approach to providing services. And I was just talking with the mayor. I know that Shaker Heights is doing that as well, and just recently received a $40,000 grant from the Cleveland Foundation to study if it would make sense to merge fire services or coordinate fire services between University Heights and Shaker Heights. Those are difficult and complicated decisions, but we're trying to bring some resources to bear with that. As a matter of fact, in about a week, we're going to be proposing basically what's a joint economic agreement between some of the suburbs. So we're trying to play that role to try to coordinate services. Now, there's 2 reasons we're trying to become more efficient. One is, as I said, is because we have to absorb all of these state budget cuts. The other reason is because there are things that you have expectations, or the charter has our new charter has an expectation that we'll start to do that we didn't do before, or maybe we did it but we should be doing more of it. And so what are those things? First of all, early childhood education. Every study that's been done that I've ever seen when it comes to the field of social services shows that your best investment is in a child's life between birth and the age of 5. And for every dollar that you can invest in a child's life at that time, that will end up paying the community back tenfold. So we are trying to divert more resources that we have into that. And we're also challenging the private sector. So we got over $1 million just this year in foundation money into our Invest in Children program. So we're making that kind of our premier investment when it comes to social services. Not that other social services aren't important, but we know that, for instance, the difference in a child's vocabulary when they start first grade is going to be one of the major determinants of what their future life is going to be. So you have kids in Cuyahoga County, you have both ends of the spectrum. You have kids that are starting first grade with a 5,000 word vocabulary, and you have kids that are starting the first grade with a 500 word vocabulary. And there are a lot of reasons it's related to class and poverty, and there's a lot of reasons why that happens. But we believe some of our programs can make a difference with that. And if we can, then the trajectory of that child's life can be dramatically different. And if you don't do that and you ignore that, then the school system, whatever it is, whether it's Cleveland or whether it's Shaker or any other suburban school district, they're going to spend the rest of that child's academic life trying to get that child to catch up. So we think that's one area where we can make a difference. College access is kind of the other bookend of the education system, and we're mandated to do that by the charter. A lot of people don't know that in the charter there was a provision that mandates us to have a college access or affordability program. Now, the charter doesn't say how we're supposed to do it. It doesn't say how we're supposed to get the money to do it. It doesn't create a revenue stream for it, but we're mandated to do it. So for the first time, the county actually has an education staffer. He's looking at best practices. We've met with all of the local universities, and I think we're eventually going to propose something in conjunction with county council that I think you're going to be very proud of. But we're looking at different ways that counties have done that across the United States, and I think we're going to be able to come up with something pretty exciting. Two other areas that we're investing. One is law enforcement. I have a somewhat of a law enforcement background as a prosecutor and FBI agent. Sheriff Reed and I have an excellent working relationship. He and I both believe that there was more that the county sheriff's office could do, and we just recently actually, was it this week? Time is flying. Was it earlier this week? Earlier this week, we announced that we're having a community policing unit operate out of the county sheriff's office. Most of the county sheriff's personnel is concentrated in our jail functions and what we do at the Justice Center. And Sheriff Reed and I both believe that we could play a larger role in coordinating and projecting law enforcement strategies out into the communities. And we're going to be doing that in coordination, in conjunction with local police forces and local police chiefs. So this is going to start with 10 or 12 officers that are going to be assigned on a rotating basis all over the county. So hopefully, I hope you'll see them in your own district, and this is one area that we thought that we should make an additional investment there. And we're doing it in partnership with local police force. So the local police force will say, listen, we'd like you to assign your unit to us, your community policing unit to us for 2 weeks, and here's how we'd like to use them, either picking people up on warrants or running radar or DUI checkpoints or a burglary task force, whatever the particular public safety need is, and then we will loan them those officers at no cost to the city, and they will be at their disposal. We'll work with them, and then we'll go on to the next community, and this is something we think has a lot of potential. Economic development. We have basically made a huge commitment, biggest commitment that the county ever has, to invest in new and growing businesses, and we've said that before the end of this year, we think we're going to be able to commit $100 floating a bond. It is not raising taxes, it's floating a bond, and then it's investing the proceeds of that bond into local businesses. And we're still developing the criteria for it. But the exciting thing that's happened, and the reason that I know that that was the right decision to announce we're going to do that, is you immediately had some private financial institutions step forward and say, if the county is willing to put in $100 million, then we're willing to match some of that money with their own investment. So I think that has a tremendous amount of potential. And again, the charter basically mandated that we take on a larger role when it comes to economic development. I think we're going to be able to do it this year. So that's my report on what I did during my summer vacation. And I hope that you get a sense for first of all what our sense of urgency is about it. And I know I can speak for the council people too, is that we've really put together a very energetic and talented group of people, and they're at the county building all times of the day and night, and there really is a sense of optimism and that we can get some things done. And it's been a great experience for the first 4.5 months. I hope you've seen some of those results. You may not like everything that you see, but I hope that you at least get a sense for how dedicated we are to making this work. So let's get to questions and tell me what's on your mind, and I will do my best to answer your questions. Yes, sir, right there.
We couldn't see the chart very well from back here, but I was interested on the chart on the revenue. What are some of the major sources of revenue that were on the chart?
Sure. Well, we can go back to it if you want. I can tell you some of them, but sales taxes is enormous. That's kind of what we probably watch the closest. We get some money from, and sales taxes is up by a few percent this year, which is a nice positive trend, so we're happy about that. We get some money from investment earnings. All that basically means is the cash value that a city or a county is always holding, because you're never spending all your money. You're always holding on to a certain amount of money, because some of it you know you're not going to spend for 30 days, some of it you know you're not going to spend for 90 days, some of it you know you're going to spend for 6 months. So the county you're always going to put that money into a certain financial vehicle. Some of it you're going to put in overnight security, some of it you're going to put in 30-day treasury bonds, some of it, and so forth. Now, the revenues for that particular line item have gone down dramatically, just like they have for any savings account. So it's really incredible how much that has dropped. That has dropped by probably 75% in the last few years, like it has for every municipality, basically. I mean, you're just not getting the interest rates that you used to get. But we get about $16 million from that. We get a lot of money that's state and federal pass-through money. So when there's a social program that's either funded by the federal government or the state government, it's a pass-through, basically. I mean, we're going to spend it, we're going to administer it, we're going to be able to take some money out for administration and for salaries, but it's basically here, and then it gets to whoever the recipient is. Property taxes are huge, of course, and property tax revenue has also traditionally been down in the last few years. It's starting to flatten out. So those are the major sources. Yes, sir.
Can you explain to me why the Cuyahoga County Board of Developmental Disabilities is essentially a semi-autonomous entity, and it's not clear to me that it's overseen with the necessary rigor?
That's a great question, because there isn't always a clear understanding as far as what agencies we actually control and which ones we do not. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. There have been some stories in the paper about Metro Hospital, and I would get calls sometimes from people saying, well, why is Metro doing this and why is Metro doing that? The county owns Metro. We appoint members of the board to Metro, but we do not make hiring and firing decisions for Metro. We don't manage it. We don't decide what kind of medical care they're going to provide or what's the best strategy. We don't do those things, but we do subsidize them. So we have a role to play there. And when there were questions that were raised about Metro, we've ended up, both council and the executive branches have ended up engaging with Metro if there's better ways that they could be fulfilling their mission. With the Developmental Disabilities Board, they're a creation of state statute. And there are other boards that are created by state statute. And they have their own independent levy that they pass, and it is still public money. So one of the things, I just met with their leadership the other day, one of the things that we still have yet to define is what role, and I'll be honest with you because I don't believe it has been defined entirely, but what role should we play with agencies that maybe get some county money, but they don't report to me? And that is a difficult balance because I can't run those agencies by fiat. On the other hand, when you give people a lot of money, they tend to listen to you. So you can make suggestions that are taken very seriously. Let me give you an example. Let me give you one other example. And by the way, we're doing this, and again, I tend to be very methodical about how you roll things out because you can't do everything at once. It would not have made sense, for instance, if in my first week in office, I really focused on Metro when I didn't have an administrative assistant yet, and I didn't have my computer set up. So we're kind of doing things in concentric circles. That's the way I describe it. So we try to get our own staff in line, we try to get our own directors in line, we try to get our own departments in line, and we're basically there. Our leadership team is in place. Now we're trying to make sure that our managers understand how to manage, our employees know their expectations. Then we're looking at, okay, how about these independent boards? What should our role be with them? How about institutions like Metro? What should our role be with them? How about nonprofits that we give a grant to? How much oversight should we have over what their budget is or their personnel? So I think we're going to get there eventually, but that still has yet to be defined. Let me give you one other example, though, of how I think that can be done in a creative way and not in an overly heavy-handed way. The county gives about $1 million a year out for hunger relief. And there was an article in the paper about this. You may have heard about this. The two big recipients were the Cleveland Food Bank and the Hunger Network. They had a dispute of long standing between the two boards and between the two organizations. And they're both great organizations. They both have a lot that you could say for either one of them. At one point, they had talked about either merging their operations or at least cooperating with each other and having a memorandum of understanding about how they could work together. But the two organizations could never agree to it. And it came time, very early in my administration, it came time to give out the $1 million that we traditionally have given for hunger relief. And I didn't want to delay it because I didn't want that human need, which is real and pressing, to be delayed. And I said, get them all in here, get the two boards down here. And at first we didn't have them in the same room, and then we did have them in the same room. But the bottom line was, I said, if you don't agree to cooperate, then we're going to have to look for other partners. You've got to put aside any disagreements you might have for the greater good. And then it helps. I had a $1 million check over here too. But look, the bottom line was they signed it. They agreed to it. And that's a good result. And that's a way that you can creatively use the power of the county executive. Now, I don't decide who they hire and they fire, but when you contribute to something, you can have some oversight. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Sharon Bell. I'm the South Shaker MyCom project manager. I'm here to advocate for our youth. I have a deep concern about the significant cut in funding for summer youth job programs. Overall, I think countywide we have over 8,000 jobs, youth registered with YOU for less than 1,000 jobs. In our community, last year we had 89 jobs, and this year we only have 15. I have a concern not only for our youth development, but also for our communities overall.
Sure.
Can anything be done to provide some kind of sufficient funding level to put our young people to work
Sure.
and keep them off the streets?
Well, your question is a great one. The answer, and not everybody knows this, but YOU, which is a great, Youth Opportunities Unlimited, which is a great program, and MyCom is a good program too. We're really able to do some really special things in the last few years, but most of that was because of federal funding. And it was an unreported benefit of the stimulus package. It was really frustrating to me, if I could just talk about national politics for a second, it was really frustrating to me that there was a lot of criticism about the stimulus package, and they talked about how the stimulus package didn't work and how this program was a waste of money and that program was a waste of money. There was, how much news did you hear about all the young people that ended up being put to work in the last couple of years because of stimulus? There was almost no news about it. Almost no news. I don't ever actually recall seeing a, you know how I found out? I found out about it because when I was the mayor of Lakewood, all of a sudden we got a call from YOU saying, we finally have the funds to put people to work. And they were great kids. They did a great job. First of all, a lot of them ended up, it helped them pay for college, support their parents, a lot of great things. The other thing it did was it led to permanent employment for a lot of them, because people, and sometimes businesses that were never really oriented to giving people that they hadn't interacted with before a chance, and then all of a sudden they saw, wait a minute, it opened their eyes and it allowed them to give some people some opportunities. The 2011, we inherited a budget from the commissioners. They passed a budget for all of 2011 that we inherited. The original budget, because they were using federal funds for that, they basically had taken out county funds. So the federal funds came in and the county funds went away. And that was fine because in 2009, 2010, they had this infusion of federal dollars, where those are gone now. The budget that we had inherited never replaced them with anything. So we came actually, the other day, I actually made the decision that we were going to put some more money in. We'll have to talk to council about it, but I believe that we should put some money into it. Now, how much we're going to be able to do under these circumstances, I don't know. I know we had talked about at least putting a few $100,000 into it. Is it going to be sufficient? It is not. It is not. In 1 year, under all the budget constraints we're under, I don't think we're going to be able to do it, but I hope we'll do better than what had been budgeted. That's the best I can tell you, ma'am. Yes, young man. Yes, sir.
For college access, they look into any linkages with the Ohio Tuition Trust Authority. They do very good work along those lines.
I know that's on our list of things to do. We started out looking, one of the themes that we try to have in our administration is we always try to look at best practices. We try to look at what's happened across the country. There are states that have had statewide programs, but we also have the Ohio program that you mentioned. There's also incredible things that have been done by local universities on their own, and we're looking at if there's a way to coordinate some of those. And so we're looking at all those options. We're not there yet. We're forming what we're calling an academic alliance, which one of the reasons, one time when I know that I'm doing the right thing is when we'll talk to a major institution and they'll say, this is the first time that anybody in the county has ever talked to us. And that happened when we started having these discussions with higher education institutions. Because we didn't just go to Tri-C, as great as Tri-C is, we didn't just go to Cleveland State. We also talked to Notre Dame College, we talked to Ursuline, we talked to Baldwin Wallace, what my goal for the program is as great as the public institutions are, some of the private institutions have fabulous records of taking kids that are sometimes coming out of really difficult academic circumstances, and some of those other institutions have greater graduation rates than some of the big public institutions are. So what I want to make sure is that we're not forcing, not having a one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to academic options. I'm not saying it all has to go to private, but I'm saying I'd like the program to have enough depth and breadth so that a kid can have multiple opportunities locally. And then the other portion of that is we've got to figure out a way to, what is the requirement going to be then for that child? If we're going to help subsidize it, does that mean they say, thank you very much for my education, now I'm moving to Chicago? We've got to figure out a way to, I mean, we don't want to chain them down, but we've got to figure out a way to do that too. Yes, sir.
I was very pleased to see in your list of the investment priorities. The first one is early childhood education. I would like to understand what role you see the county executive and the county government having in early childhood education, in what way this augments the activities of the cities. And I think answering that may also help me and perhaps other people understand the special roles of county government.
Sure. Well, in general, your city government is not going to play much of a role when it comes to early pre-K education and care. They pick up, and the school districts are going to pick up sometimes at a 4-year-old level, but many times not until first grade level. So that's the gap, I think, where we already have some model programs, but we don't fully implement them. So there's a few thousand kids that we serve a year, and those funds have been cut in the last 3 to 4 years. So the state assistance for those programs that we run through our Invest in Children program, they started being cut in about 2009. This will be the first year, by the way, that funding actually goes up for those programs, even though the state is, again, cutting a lot of that assistance. So I think that the county government actually, that's one area where I think we're going to have an expanded role. And it's not just tutoring or things of that nature. It's making sure that the parent-child bond is appropriate, and that the parents have the skills that they need to care for that child. You know, the number one determinant, in terms of most studies that have been done, the number one determinant of a child's future success is just whether or not that child really connects with an adult that cares about them, and that they have that kind of positive relationship in the first place. And that's a number that's it's not just the compassionate thing to do or the moral thing to do, but it also makes economic sense. So we're going to continue to roll those programs out and hopefully expand them. They've been done on a pilot basis, and the numbers are encouraging in terms of how effective they've been. Yes, sir.
County Executive Fitzgerald, what provisions do you have in place, or are you putting in place, to see this small businesses, small disadvantaged businesses have a level playing field and are getting their fair share of the entitlements due throughout Cuyahoga County?
Every contract that we're gonna end up letting out, we're trying to set a goal whenever we legally can. We're trying to set a goal to make sure, if it's a big project, that there's representation from contractors that have maybe been excluded in the past. Now, the big project that we're working on that with is with the Medical Mart contract. Now, there is a long legal history, as you may know, about efforts to do that. You can't have an artificial formula where you say exactly this much will be given exactly as a per capita basis to such and such a group. You cannot do that. Those have been found to be unconstitutional. But we now have several major projects in Cuyahoga County that have set goals for local spending, for women and minority-owned businesses. They'll set a goal of 25% or 35%, and they've been hitting those goals. I'll give you a couple examples. I was at a library opening in Warrensville Heights a few weeks ago. They set a goal of 25% minority contract inclusion, and they're at something like 32%. So part of it is just telling your organization, listen, this is a goal, and we want to get there. We want to make sure that the contracting process in Cuyahoga County is not a closed system. We want to make sure that a contract is given on the basis of quality and merit and not on who you know. And that's related not just to issues of justice and equity, that's also related to issues of integrity and corruption. That's part of the reason why we've had the scandals that we've had. So it's setting goals, and it's also being completely transparent about how those contracts are given out. We have had repeated meetings with the biggest contracts we're letting out have to do with the Medical Mart project, because that will eventually be $400 million worth of projects. And that is our stated goal, is that we want to make sure that those benefits of that contracting process are distributed out into the community. So it's a work in progress, but we are committed to it. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
What strategies do you have in place to improve services with people with autism and specific and perhaps developmental disabilities for young adults 18 and up?
Well, I probably won't give you as detailed as an answer as I would like, because, but I can tell you that we did meet with some of the folks from the Developmental Disabilities Board, and I am interested in making sure that our services are provided in a way that is accessible to everybody, whether they have a physical handicap or whether they have a mental challenge or disability. But I can't tell you that I have, a list of protocols of how we're going to do that. I do think it's important, and one of the things I'm going to seek to do in all kinds of different services is making sure that we have advisory committees of people that can tell us how we can do better. And that's probably one area where we could. And so if you end up having specific suggestions, or we can figure out some kind of a format where we can get feedback on how we can improve, or areas where we're falling down on providing those kind of services, then I will be all ears for that. Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you for recognizing me, sir.
Sure.
I'd like to offer an opportunity, any event that the county can take advantage of. This is about education. We have been doing this program for 25 years. We look for investors. We take 120 to 200 students from the Cleveland Municipal School District, bring them to our campus, provide a math environment, campus visitation. And if the student is a senior, he or she with a certain grade point average can qualify for what we call our presidential scholarship. Now, if the government, county government that is, can see fit to start infusing some of those discretionary funds in a way that we can do a better job. Is it legal? If so, please help us.
Is it legal? I think it's legal. You should talk to, my education staffer is a guy by the name of Justin Bibb. I would encourage you to sit down and talk to him. We're looking at, we can't be all things to all people. We're not, there's a lot of great programs out there where we're going to have to say no, but we'll give you a hearing on it, and if it makes sense, it might be something we'd be interested in. I don't want to say just based on a brief description, but if you call him tomorrow, his name is Justin Bibb. I don't think he's here today, but we'd be more than willing to sit down and talk with you, and I have an open mind about it. Yes, ma'am, right there. Yes. There you go.
Mr. Fitzgerald, my name is Fran Mensch. I'm a member of Citizens for Oakwood. Oakwood is the largest privately held green space in the inner reach suburbs of Cleveland, and we need your help because this is a regional issue. I don't know how familiar you are with this, but Oakwood is located in two cities, South Euclid and Cleveland Heights. Within a stone's throw of Oakwood is University Heights. Much of that land, all of that land is in the University Heights, Cleveland Heights School District. In that same stone's throw area, University Heights has a heavily tipped development, University Square. The city of South Euclid wants to use Cleveland Heights, University Heights School District's money to abate Cedar Center. No one wants them to build on Oakwood, that they are moving towards rezoning, and it will cost the residents of Cleveland Heights and University Heights for them to do that against our will. Isn't that a perfect regional issue? I ask you please to help us to have the officials of South Euclid, Cleveland Heights, and University Heights sit down together. Can you please help us with this?
Oh, sure. No, I don't want to be flippant about it. Indeed, I was, but the I've heard from both sides about it, and this goes back to something I said at the outset, and that is there are certain things that the county government controls directly, and there are other things that are important or pressing public issues that we may play a role in, but it has to be with the consent of the localities that are interested in it. Let me give you an example, okay? The regional sewer district the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District has proposed to charge an impermeable surface fee to help with the maintenance and control of stormwater runoff. And they were planning on imposing that fee on their member communities. There were some member communities that agreed to it, and there are others that did not agree to it. Now, and then litigation started. They've spent over $1 million in public money between the cities and the sewer district arguing back and forth about it. I could not mandate the outcome to it, but I called up the sewer district folks and I called up the mayors of the cities and I said, would you be willing to have us host a mediation? And they said yes. We brought them down to the 4th floor of the county administration building and we held them there for a while, and they agreed to submit, but not in a binding way. Nobody's going to come in and say, yes, you're going to make the decision. But they agreed that we would help manage a mediation process. And I appointed Jeff Mearns, who I think some of you may be familiar with, who's a very distinguished attorney and a great public servant. And I asked him if he would be willing for free to mediate the matter. And he's been doing that for about 3 weeks. Those are the first substantive settlement talks that happened in a year. Now, it may not settle. I'm not saying for sure it's going to settle. But they weren't even talking to each other. If South Euclid and Cleveland Heights and the various citizen organizations that have grown up around this issue, if they have an interest in talking and there is a middle ground or there's some, I think that's an appropriate role to help try to mediate it. But there are some disputes that are not amenable to that. Sometimes it's winner take all. There is a dispute between two cities and there's going to be a winner and a loser. And they don't want to negotiate. And we can only go as far as they will allow. I'll give you one more example. The American Greetings situation. There'll be something in the paper about it tomorrow. I wanted American Greetings to stay in Brooklyn. I knew that American Greetings was probably going to leave. I had a guess of where they were going to. I didn't know for sure. I wanted, and they ended up going to, they announced they're going to Westlake. I wanted Westlake to agree to negotiate with Brooklyn about a tax sharing arrangement. And I talked to Governor Kasich about the same thing. They didn't want to do it. I can't force them to do it. So, but if people have an open mind and they're willing to talk about it, then there might be a role for the county to play.
May I just have one thing?
Sure.
And then I'll stop.
Sure.
I just want to say two things. Number one, and I mean this in the most positive way possible, when we voted for a county government to address regionalism, this was not an idea. This was not an abstract thing. We expected it to bring about change. So please keep that in mind. And there are 3 cities involved. And the other thing that I want to say is you said you understand both sides of the argument. There are 3 sides of the argument. 3 sides of the argument. There's city government, there's the private developer, and the citizens. And that's why I'm here asking you to help us come together. I understand you can make no promises. I'm just asking you to help us bring it together. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, sir. Right back there.
Congratulations on being elected.
Oh, thanks.
You know, you could pick either one of these 6. Since I have you here, I have an opportunity to ask you. Not asking these questions, it's things I just don't understand. The first thing is the medical examiner.
Okay.
$220,000, makes more than the governor, makes more than the senators, makes more than every single state elected individual. I don't understand it. According to the ME, average salary runs from $45,000 to $110,000.
Okay. Do you want me to answer them one at a time, or you want to go through your list?
You can just answer just one of the sentences.
Okay, because I want to answer that one. But go ahead. Go ahead.
Really quick. The second one is, just please tell me the picture's not going to be on the pumps of the gasoline when I get gasoline. That's a simple one.
Whose picture do you want?
The third one is on the Metro. It just bothered me a lot. It's part of my money, $7 million in the consultant. When the county is giving X amount of dollars to Metro, it seems to me we have a voice at the table. I don't know how big a voice, but it seemed to me you have a voice.
Okay.
The fourth one is, recently I just went down to the County Board of Election building. It's one of your 50 buildings. I walked in, I couldn't believe it. I had only been there once in my life, and that was about 8 years ago. Walked in, nobody's there. The fifth, the 18 sheriffs. You mentioned 12, Landila mentioned 18 sheriffs. Did you possibly, additional sheriffs, did you possibly think of $500,000? That's a lot of money. 18 sheriffs, I'm not in law enforcement, 18 doesn't seem to me a huge amount spread over this entire county. It would seem to me that we could have done a little better job with $500,000.
Okay.
That's all. Did you look at any alternatives?
Okay. That was 5. Got one more?
I've called any number of the departments down at the county. Some open at 8:30, some open at 9 o'clock, and they don't know how to answer phones.
Okay.
Some give me who runs for court, whatever. They're
Okay,
giving
let
me
me-
names. Names should not be included. The person's name, who's answering the phone, and where you're calling. I didn't understand it.
Okay.
If we're going to run it like a so-called business, and for me, as a citizen, I want to know.
All right, let me try to run through as quickly as I can the answers to your question. The medical examiner does make more money than a lot of elected officials, and I think he should. There was a national study that was done about 2 years ago about the state of affairs when it comes to coroner's offices and medical examiner's offices across the United States, and it's a disgrace. There are coroners that only make $45,000. There are also coroner's offices that are some of the least professional in developed countries. We have an antiquated system when it comes to medical examiners' offices in the United States. because we were relying on elected officials. I mean, how crazy is that you would elect somebody to perform autopsies? It didn't make any sense. It was a relic of the 19th century. The individual that by the way, our coroner's office, which does not meet national accrediting standards, I don't know if you know that, but it did not meet national accrediting standards, was not being run, in my opinion, as a first-class professional operation. It wasn't nationally accredited. You had employees down there that were being extorted for political contributions, and I was absolutely determined to bring somebody in that was absolutely at the top of their field when it comes to professionalism and medical ability when it comes to the forensic field. Yes, he's going to make more than Governor Kasich, but I think he's going to do a better job. And you should go, you should sit down, you should go to his confirmation hearing, because this guy, first of all, he was deputy chief medical examiner in New York City. He's the number 2 person right now in Rhode Island. He has taken over other medical examiner offices that have had corruption problems and performance issues. And he's turned them around. And I was determined to bring somebody in that was absolutely one of the top people in the country to come in here and turn that situation around. Now but here's what the point is. He makes more than the old coroner does. That's definitely true. But we also just cut about $400,000 in costs from the coroner's office. So the question is not whether or not anybody in county government gets paid more. As a taxpayer, what I want to know is the operation more efficient? If I have more employees that are getting paid less, I would rather have maybe fewer employees, and some of them that are top flight leadership are going to make a little bit more. Now, if I give you the exact same product for more money, you will have a legitimate point. If you come back 2 years from now and say the coroner's office is just like it was before, but you're paying somebody more money for the same product, you'd be right. But just like as you may be a fan of the private sector, if somebody can perform, then they may make more money doing it. And it is going to be on Dr. Gilson to turn around that office and raise its standards to the level that it had in years past, because our coroner's office was at one time one of the most respected in the country, and it can be again, and it should be again. So now my other answers will be quicker. No, my picture will not be on the gas pumps, and no one else's picture will be either. Metro Hospital, legitimate questions have been raised about some management practices at Metro. I think that the county commissioners had, in general, I'm generalizing here, had a hands-off philosophy when it came to Metro and other boards and agencies at time. We are taking a much stronger look at it. So we set up a task force which is going to produce a report in a fairly short period of time about what we see as some deficiencies in Metro's operations, and I think we're going to make some practical suggestions that I think they're going to listen to. So that's coming. The Board of Elections, I've been at the Board of Elections much more, unfortunately, than once or twice. I've probably been hundreds of times. I've never seen what you described. But if there was someone that wasn't there, if you walked into the building and there was no one there, because there's both security and there's usually a civilian there that checks people in, and I've never seen that. I've literally been there hundreds of times. But if you say that happened, I believe you. Let us know. Even though, again, I don't directly supervise it, we have some oversight over them, and if we see a customer service issue, we want to know about it. One of the first things that we put on our website was there's a little icon on our website that says, report a problem. If you get bad customer service, if you see something that just isn't right, if you see an employee that's behaving in a way that's unethical or unprofessional, let us know. Because a manager can only respond to what they know. So please, please let us know. And that kind of answers your last one too. As to the sheriffs, I respectfully disagree with you. Let me give you an example of what 18 additional sheriffs does. Let me give you an example of a city of, let's say the city of Euclid, okay? City of Euclid is a city of almost, it's about a city of about 50,000 people. At any one time, they may only have 6 or 7 officers out on the road. Same with City of Lakewood. City of Lakewood, a little over 50,000. At any one time, with 3 shifts of officers, you may only have 6 or 7 cars out on the road. So you're talking about now, those are 2 of the bigger suburbs. Parma might have 10 or 12 officers out on the road at any one time. Now, you talk about the city of Cleveland, where they are talking about laying off 50 police officers. How long do you think it takes sometimes in the city of Cleveland to get a police car to show up unless it is a life-threatening situation? I'll tell you a little story, a little anecdote back when I was a prosecutor. I was looking at all these police reports that had to do with home break-ins and burglaries and so forth, and I noticed that the callers a lot of time would say that there was someone with a gun, because you'd have a transcript of the 911 call. And over again, it would say there's a person with a gun or a person with a gun. But then you'd read the report, it was about a burglary. Like, why did that happen? Because they knew that if they didn't say there's somebody with a gun, they were going to wait and wait and wait and wait. Putting 10 or 12 officers on a shift in some of these communities will double and sometimes triple the police presence. Now, is it an absolute solution? No, no. But visibility works. Visibility is one of the most important things you do to prevent crimes before it happens. And, you know, maybe eventually we'll have more than 10 or 12 officers, but it's an important tool that I think we can give local police forces. I'm going over time. I want to take one more. What time is it? Oh, it's 8:15. First of all, I want to thank you for coming down and listening to me. I'm going to do these, oh, thank you. The guy that started clapping is an old friend of mine. Thank you, William. I appreciate it. And I know you were swept away by your day. Yeah. But I'm going to do these once a month, and it doesn't mean that if it's not in your district, you can't go. So if the gentleman in the back has 7 through 12, I'll see you next month, and that's fine. And I'm not teasing you. I mean it. Because I don't want softballs. I want difficult questions. That's good. And I take them. I try to occasionally be funny, but I take this stuff seriously. We'll do this every month, and even if it's not in your district, you can travel even to the far distant west side. You can come see us on that side of town. But I want to thank you sincerely. The weather was lousy, and you came out and this, I think, just the turnout and that people were listening and engaging is a good sign for the future of county government. Yes, you're the very last one. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Councilwoman Deborah Hill from the city of Warrensville Heights, and I really do want to personally commend you and Sheriff Lee for sending people out into our communities on your policing community initiative, because we were the beneficiaries in the city of Warrensville Heights, and on behalf of the residents of Warrensville Heights, we would like to continue that partnership. And I just wanted to personally come out and just thank you so very, very
well,
much.
and not everybody knows the specific circumstance she's talking about, but the city of Warrensville was a burglary ring where they had a specific problem with a couple folks that were robbing house after house after house, and they needed a little bit of assistance. And as kind of a dry run of what we can do with this unit, we sent some additional personnel out there and immediately made, was it 3 arrests right away? So it's not a panacea. I'm not saying crime is going to evaporate, but it's an important investment we can make in our community. I want to leave you with this thought, just in terms of, there are problems. It is a work in progress. There are things that we're doing better, I think, but I hope you'll be patient with us. I hope you'll remember all of those assets that we listed at the beginning of this presentation, and I hope that in a year or two, you'll include county government as one of the positive things that we have here in Cuyahoga County. Thank you very much.